Christine, since you are new to us, I'll give our official. Everybody's heard it a lot of times, but my name is Melissa, and I am the co-founder of this lovely thing we call Imaginarium, which is ultimately a space where we imagine a better world together and then figure out how we intentionally make it so. And we do practices. We call them spiritual practices or life practices, whichever way fits more peacefully into your flow of life. But we do those every time we gather. And so we have about 6 things that we'll do together in a moment. But ultimately, we choose to get around values instead of any doctrine or belief system. And so our sort of core values are this idea that we believe every living person and living thing has inherent magic and worth. We also believe that everything is inherently connected to each other. So the whole family and the natural world around us, we're connected to it. And finally, that we share then some responsibility then to each other and to the world around us. And part of why we gather to not only celebrate those things, but to also figure out what is my role, what is my responsibility, what more can I be doing to make myself and the world around me thrive. So that's why we gather, and that's why we every week, and we're very dialogue driven. We love to talk. We love different people to pass the mic, if you will. So a lot of these practices will include all of us speaking into it in some form or fashion. But we're really glad that you're here with us and glad that everyone else is here and back as usual too. So Nathan's going to help lead us in some practices today. But the first practice I'm going to start off with is our naming practice. And this is where typically if we were in a space together in the same room, we would go around the room. And this is an opportunity for not only for you to introduce yourself, and if you come back into this space, we do this every time, no matter what. So it's not only reminding each other of our names, but it's ultimately saying, like, my name is Melissa and I deserve to be here. My voice matters in this conversation and in this moment and on this earth. And so we want you to introduce yourself, share your preferred pronouns if you feel comfortable, and tell us where you're actually tuning in from today. And I would love to do something fun just to add what has been your favorite part about this weekend thus far. Okay, so name, pronoun, where you're coming from, what's been your favorite part about this weekend thus far. So I'll start, and I'll call you out. There's only a few of us today, but I'll call you so then you can unmute at that point. So I'm Melissa Green. We're tuning in from Spring Hill, Tennessee. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And my favorite thing about this weekend has been literally being outside for the majority of it in the sun. I'm going to pass it to my mother since she's here in the room.
Hi, I'm Cindy Hoppus in Spring Hill, Tennessee. My favorite thing from this weekend is we sold our house in Florida, so yay!
Woohoo! I love it.
Yes.
Okay, Nathan, you're up.
All right, Nathan Johns, he, him, and in Lebanon, Tennessee. And I think my favorite part of the weekend has just been the good time with the kids. Although we just had a Zoom call with my dad. Today's his 70th birthday. We were supposed to be in Port Aransas, Texas this weekend. And so we did a Zoom call as a family, and that was a lot of fun. So
I love that. Okay, Ryan and Evan, our marketing directors.
Hi, I'm Ryan. We are calling from East Nashville, he, him, and my favorite part of the weekend so far is we got this new board game called Chronicles of Crime, and it's amazing.
We're obsessed.
It's so cool. So like if you like police procedural kind of things, TV shows, it like kind of puts you in the shoes of the detective, and everything's on your phone. So you got the board, and then you have an app on your phone, and so you like go through the story. It's hard to explain, but it's really, really cool. Anyway, that's it.
I'm Evan, he, him, and I got a new hat that I really love. So, you know, it's the small things these days.
We forgot to unsubscribe from our dog food, and so now we have dog food for like the rest of the year.
Yep,
so
yep. It really is the little things, guys.
The attic's full of dog food.
Well stopped. Leah, you're up.
Okay, my name is Leah. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I live in Madison, Nashville, Tennessee. And my favorite part of this weekend, I haven't really done a lot this weekend. But I think maybe my favorite part was video chatting with a friend yesterday that I haven't talked to in a while.
Love it. Lovely. Abby Buter.
I'm Abby, she, her pronouns, and I'm in Tacoma, Washington, which is really exciting. I made it. And my favorite thing this weekend is I'm living with my brother and sister-in-law and their 2 kids. And yesterday we went to a state park and to the beach and went on a hike, and it was beautiful, and also like a really great reminder of like, this is why I moved out here. It's so beautiful. And so it was really, really fun.
Love it. Chris Hauser.
Hey everybody, Chris Hauser from Brentwood, he, him. Linda is in the garden. I would not expect her to be able to figure out her phone, getting Zoom just on there, getting it, although she might break in any moment and just shock me to no end. I think Friday, as we said before, was our anniversary, and it's always a kind of a sweet time looking back. Her birthday was on Wednesday, and I went and found some photos to see if I could put up a couple different pictures than the normal pictures that are on Facebook. And it just struck me how it's like a 38-year-old person. Like, what's a 38-year-old person like? What have they arrived at in life? And that's kind of us. That we're a middle-aged person together. I mean, we had a good old-fashioned argument yesterday, which was, I run from those things, but I know we're alive and we care, and we're invested in one another when we can have strong feelings and not just give up and quit. And so I think the whole weekend's been great, and getting outside and working together. She's kicking ass in the garden. That's been a blast. So there you go. Thank you.
Love it. Hey, Christine, you are up with your lovely child as well.
I am Christine. This is Sierra. I assume for now she goes by she, her, so do I. And we are calling in from small town Bell Fountain, Ohio. And I've enjoyed, like other people, being outside. Yesterday, I took Sierra in the stroller to sort of sprint to the farmer's market. Here is doing like a online thing where you can order ahead and then just grab your items. So I was gonna miss my time cutoff, so I had to like race with her in the stroller to get our honey, and we made it. So that was fun.
Love it. So glad you're here.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, she, her, still in Dallas, Texas. My favorite thing about this weekend is tomorrow is my parents' anniversary, and they're going out of town for 3 days. So,
Love it.
Very cool.
Glad you're with us, Elizabeth. Abby Lane just joined us. You're just at the end of the name practice, Abby. And we talked about what, not just your name and preferred pronouns, but what's been the best thing about your weekend.
My name's Abby Lane, she, her. And the best thing about my weekend so far is I just went on a new forest trail and I found a deer.
Love it. She found a deer, yeah. She sent a video.
Aww.
The deer was beautiful.
Aww.
Love it. All right, I think that's everybody. Well, we're going to go into our next practice, which we've already sort of started doing, but we're going to do it officially, and Nathan's going to set it up for us.
Yes, of course. So we do a practice each week called Tell Me Something Good, which comes with the theme song of Tell Me Something Good.
Nathan?
And so, yeah, if you guys have something good that you want to share with the group, just go ahead and raise your hand or wave at me, and we'll let you on. I'm recording, so I only have the big screen, so I can't see all the little individual screens. So if Melissa, you can help me identify who's got something good, but I'll start. I have been working on a project at work for about 4 months now, and it just got approval to be funded, so I'll be busy for the rest of the year, which I'm really looking forward to, which is exciting. So
Love it.
yeah.
Very good.
I'll share. So, well, as I said a second ago, I made it to Tacoma, which is great news. And thankfully, it was a very uneventful 4-day long road trip and went smoothly and well. So that was exciting. And I'm just glad to be here. So that's good. And I have applied for lots of jobs. So it's all out there in the universe. So we'll see what happens. But I feel good about actually getting to be where I've wanted to be the last few months. So that feels good.
Awesome. I see Leah has her hand up.
Yeah. I have had some good conversations with my little sister this week. She's 12 years younger than me, so kind of a big age gap. She's still in like halfway through college. But lately we've had some good conversations, both about catching up and about like life and money and finances and how to be safe during COVID. So I don't know, it's been good talking about adult things with, I mean, I know she's in college, but I still consider her my little baby sister.
Love it.
Awesome. All right, Hauser.
So there's a band, a CCM band called Hawk Nelson, right? Anyone remember the band Hawk Nelson? Kind of like a, I don't know, a little bit of a Green Day ripoff. It's all a ripoff of somebody, but anyway, John Steingard became their lead singer in 2012, and this past Thursday he put up a Instagram post 9 pages long explaining why he doesn't believe in God anymore. And it's thrown a lot of people off. It's been a really, really interesting process seeing lots of my friends in the industry tell them they love him, they support him, they're with him. But other people on some Facebook pages are saying things like, we can get him back, just super silly evangelical type stuff. And there's this group of us who remain in the CCM industry who are progressive, who are deconstructed, and we're kind of not rallying around him. He's not asking for that, but I'm hoping that I can make some connection with him. I know him a little bit, but not very much. I worked Hawk Nelson Records a long time ago, not since he's been lead singer, but it's propelling the conversation forward. It's forcing people to come to grips with, they tried to shut down Jen Hatmaker and it didn't work. And they tried to shut down Michael Gungor and it didn't work. And they tried to shut down Glennon Doyle and it didn't work. And all those people just keep finding new audiences, and there's just a breaking down of the walls. And I'm really excited about what the future can hold for people's becoming more honest with themselves. So that's something that's kind of fresh and new. Thanks.
Read it to Ben. Ben handed it to me. He was driving in the car and he said, "Can you read this to me?" So I read all 9 pages out loud in the car. And I immediately told him what I'm going to share with y'all today about this book that I read at the end of my seminary journey. And I'm going to have Ben send it to him and ask him if he wants to talk. So I love that I saw your commentary on the post, but yeah, I think it's very good.
Yeah.
I have something good in process of weird, so go with me here for a minute. I told y'all maybe on the happy hour the other day that we found brown recluse in our house. We found 3 of them now. So we had the Terminator, the exterminator come. I want him to be a Terminator. And they've just set traps at this point. And then Ben and I have been reading so much. So basically as best we can tell what Ben has read and what I've read, they're not they are poisonous, they are venomous, but most people get bites. If they get a bite, it's always going to be because it's in your clothes and it gets pressed up against your body. It's not like they come out attacking you or whatever. But if you get a bite, it's sometimes just a little welt, and then you can see the extreme things where it's not a little welt. Anyways, literally, I don't know if you understand what it feels like to think about these things in your walls and this possibility. So it consumes your mind while you're in it. So I've literally been telling myself, I am connected to these spiders somehow. I am responsible. I am going to put out this energy that we are in harmony together. And if you stay in my walls, you're fine. Just don't come out. And so Ben and I, then he found out that they love corrugated cardboard. Like they love that. And I've got 70 boxes in my garage still, because mostly books, because we've moved into a smaller house and it's just in the garage. So then today we spent half the morning like with gloves on, like slowly going through boxes and getting things out. So anyways, I don't know, there's some goodness about like trying to approach this holistically, which I love animals and whatnot, but seeing a brown recluse and it being like a real thing is a different story. So I'm trying to find the good in the midst of it. I just named that. So yeah. Also, we're about to go on a mini vacation, and Ben's like, I guess we have to tell our house sitters that there's brown recluse spiders. Don't feed those pets. Good times. Anybody else?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nathan.
I just said I don't think there's anyone else.
Oh, great. I meant, sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh, sorry. My bad. So we're going to move into our honoring of the land and the space practice as well. So traditionally, we've specifically honored the original homeland of the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Shawnee, and the Yuchi tribal nations. But as we've moved to virtual meetings, we now have participants across the United States and even in other countries. So today I offer an expanded acknowledgement of the painful histories of genocide and forced removal from all territories, and we honor and respect the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to the land in which we sit.
I love it. Thank you, Nathan. Haven, this is Haven. We have one new friend on with us. That's Christine right there. Everybody else knows Haven, but Haven leads us in our last practice, an embodiment practice.
So this is supposed to help you. This is supposed to help you study and trust yourself. So you put your hands together like this, and you go thumb to pinky. And you go, as you go there, as you move your fingers, you go, stop, breathe, know your worth. All together. Stop, breathe, know your worth. One more time. Stop, breathe, know your worth. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Haven. Get back now. All right, then Nathan and Ashley found a special song for us this week.
Yeah. So Ashley and I first watched this about a week ago, and we were both really moved by the lyrics. The very brief history of the song itself was OK Go's lead singer, Damien Kulash, and his family had all had bouts with coronavirus. And so afterwards, he wrote this song, and it kind of, to us, sort of echoed what we as a group had sort of expressed a few weeks ago, the idea that we're kind of all experiencing this global event together with similar thoughts and feelings and frustrations, but at the same time separated kind of in our own private pods or chrysalis. So I'll share this video with you.
It's all still the same. Everything's untouched, but forever changed. Oh, we're all still the same. Everything touched but forever changed. All the colors we painted yesterday, they look so different now. All those harmonies we sang yesterday all sound so different somehow. Though they're all still the same. Everything's untouched but forever changed. Everywhere on earth, every single soul, everyone there is all together now. And everyone alone all together on the precipice. All that mattered then, all that matters now, all that matters after the world shuts down. All of it dissolved all together in the chrysalis. Together in the chrysalis. Nothing changes until one day it does. And there's no going back. Our best selves and our worst selves live in that moment there. Sparring over who draws the new maps. And though their lines may look the same, everything depends on who wins that game. Everywhere on earth, every single soul, everyone there is all together now. And everyone alone all together on the precipice. All that mattered then, all that matters now, all that matters after the world shuts down. All of it dissolved all together in the chrysalis. Together in the chrysalis. Now the impossible's happening, a million knots that we were told can't be untied, would always hold on unraveling. And even while heavens fall, the fog's still wrapped around us all. And when it's snuffed out every last star, we'll see just who we are, just who we are. All together now, all together now, all together alone in the chrysalis. We're all together now, all together now, all together alone in the chrysalis. We're all together now, all together now, all together alone in the chrysalis. All together now, all together now, all together alone in the chrysalis. We're all together now, all together now, all together alone in the chrysalis. All together now, all together now, all together alone in the chrysalis. We're all together now, all together now, all together alone in the chrysalis. All together now, we're all together alone.
Ah, I'm obsessed. Thank you for that, Nathan and Ashley. I think creativity is just flourishing right now. Like that's one beautiful thing about this season is to watch how inventive we can all be. I love that. I loved every bit of that. We'll also share that later in the community group too, so if you want to rewatch it or share it yourselves. Well, there will be a community email coming out tomorrow with sort of an update on, we actually have a schedule of what we're going to do for the next month. So I'm excited to bring y'all into that, and so you can sort of mark your calendars and know what's coming up. This is the closing of a season for me, which all of you save Christine know about. This I've been on a 3-year seminary journey and just graduated last weekend. And so the last class I took was or the second to last class this semester that I took was a guided research, which is just where you can sort of choose what you want to study, get it approved, and then professor walks through the semester with you. So I had to write a paper out of that, and I wanted to share that with y'all today because I chose to do 2 books, one called Anatheism, which is ascend to that gentleman that Chris talked about earlier. The other book called Race, a theological, what's the logical discussion? It doesn't matter. J. Cameron Carter is the author. So I chose to read these 2 books. And then as I started to write about them, I really was just reflecting on the last 3 years, which Imaginarium was birthed at the same time I started my seminary journey. And so like so many have been on this journey with me from the very get-go. And so this is sort of a synopsis. And it was lovely for me to sort of put a pin to it for this part of it and decide about what's coming next. I was going to edit the first because most of you didn't need a refresher on what happened at Grace Point anyways, but because Christine's with us today, I'd rather honor her and give her the first few paragraphs. So hang with me for the first few, but hopefully you'll enjoy the rest. And then we can talk about, I'm interested as I reflect over this and whether you've been a part of Imaginarium for 6 months or the 3 years, I'm just wondering what it brings up in you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that for next week too, but I would love at the end, or as things come up, if you're like, oh yes, I remember us discussing this, oh, this continued to change me, or this is why I'm here, etc. I'd love to hear your commentary and feedback at the end too. So, all right. So as I'm ending my seminary journey, I want to focus and critically explore post-theism and the opportunity for individuals to further pursue the idea of beloved community beyond religion and beyond the church. This has also been my journey the last 3 years and will continue to be moving forward. Thanks to my seminary journey, my work has intersected and been most impacted by both professors of color and works by people of color. Their insights into the ideas of God, systemic and personal racism in the world and the church, and justice work in America continue to expand my views and my work. So because of this, I'm choosing to end my reading with the guided research with the books Anatheism by Richard Kearney and Race, a Theological Account by J. Cameron Carter. To understand where I find myself now, I want to return to 3 years ago. When I started my first class for my seminary journey, I was pastoring from the fringes of Christianity. I'd been serving for almost 8 years as an associate pastor at Grace Point Church. We were a post-evangelical, interdenominational congregation, which already gave us a niche location in the greater body. But our choice to grow and sustain a community that was made up of so many disenfranchised Christians and marginalized voices in our society because they were LGBTQ plus people, that located us as a community also on the margins. Although the leaders, including myself, of this community gleefully found ourselves not wanting to be located in any one place or on any one doctrine, we were explorers, adventurous, curious, and intentionally on a journey that did not know our end, but enjoyed the process of continual discovery about ourselves and the divine. A finding we welcome the community into with us those last few months. This was so that the community could know precisely where the leadership was, as well as so that the community would undergo their own discovery. The church, for the most part, at first respected that we as leaders would be honest about our inquiry and questions of God and the meaning of life, until later many decided otherwise. They wanted certainty and the comfort of answers, not wide open spaces and inquiry. There's much more that factored into my decision to leave this particular church and the institutional church altogether, but suffice to say that there was also toxicity present in the leadership and in the structure of that church and in so many other churches I encountered. I was not respected as a female leader. I was no longer welcomed in my inquiry as a leader. I was no longer welcomed due to my needing for accountability to be present in leadership in general. I no longer fit because what was lauded as authentic leadership on a journey was now quickly labeled as other. So I was no longer willing to invest my time and my family and my passions into this place. The people were not the inherent problem. The people were following the ways of the system in which they were brought up. They knew no other way. They'd never been encouraged nor permitted to think outside of their boxes. Now, sure, they'd allowed their boxes to shift in the past and to at least make room for LGBTQ plus people to be seen as inherently beloved right alongside everyone else. This was indeed a substantial and needed shift. But that move alone seemed to unsettle enough foundation, and what they as a community wanted to be was, again, not offered more uncertainty and questions, but comforted. And I, now years later, cannot blame them for that decision. However, I was deeply wounded in the process, and although I am healed from that part of my story, those scars still speak today. As I exited the church, I somewhat ironically stepped into full-time graduate studies for this Master's of Divinity. So I was not entirely outside of the Christian umbrella and institution. I just was no longer living and leading there. I was a visitor and a welcomed and sometimes unwelcomed guest. My spiritual journey would indeed continue both formally and informally. I should clarify quickly that my issues with the institution were never with the story of Jesus. I'm still profoundly impacted by so much of that story. However, my problems laid with what too often humanity has done with that story. Also, my ideas of God had shifted so drastically from my Southern Baptist evangelical upbringing through my progressive lens into now even the image of a theistic God left me wanting as well. I was not comfortable with labeling myself as an atheist, for I was not against the idea of God or the divine. It was just that the God that I was given, the God who was male, the God who would torture and abuse most of humanity in eternal damnation, the God who in various stages I had worshiped, the God who did not intervene with suffering as I had experienced it. This was the same God who seemed to overlook the marginalized in the world in all my travels and even on my own shores and land. This was a God that was captured by only one religion, the God who was separate, etc. All of these ways I could not come to understand could now be God to me anymore. So what or whomever God was a mystery, and I was remaining open to that mystery, but no longer available to old definitions that had proposed to capture that essence. This is where post-theism entered my vocabulary. With that same intention, I co-founded a non-religious spiritual community at the same time I began this journey. Imaginarium would become a place for the unsettled, a place for the curious, a place for the learners, a place that could house all walks of life and those that were peaceful and unpeaceful within a religion. We were those that wanted to understand better our inherent magic, connection to the world, and thus our responsibility to that world. Imaginarium is a place where I could both lead and teach, as well as partner with others to do that as well. It's a place that would try to remain non-hierarchical in both our mission and our practice. This is a place that would ask for and respond to accountability, a place that would have an agile structure and willingness to assess all that we do at all times, a place that would have room for discussions about the idea of God, the divine, and humanism right alongside each other. Ultimately, we've decided if it is going to be discussed, we would need to include how it affects humanity and the world. Otherwise, it's not a priority discussion for us. This was a broad vision that is hard to pare down to an elevator pitch, as we all know. But this was something not only I deeply believe the world needed, but I needed it as well. And what was good for me, I found was also good for some others. So we began to imagine a better world and then intentionally make it so, one day at a time. This was not without a strong critique of both churches and religions, as well as other institutions and structures that limit humanity. But we decided to focus on prioritizing creating the new and the better versus simply critiquing the status quo. It was and is still a balance for us. The effort to dismantle systems was there, but the excitement really came in the movement towards creating the new that both the world and we needed and longed for. So many of my classes and studies during this 3-year journey have brought me into contact with new voices that have given me different perspectives of both the divine and the human family. 3 years ago, when Professor Monica Coleman exposed me to womanist theology, I felt not pulled backwards into old boxes, but introduced to deep and expansive views that were born out of struggle and not out of privilege. The womanist perspective has explicitly impacted my life and my work with Imaginarium. And although this perspective is housed solely from women of color, they have graciously invited the whole world into their learnings. And for that, I am grateful. I realized in the first reading of The Womanist Idea by Layli Mapayan that my desires in starting and leading a non-religious spiritual community were matched and given a more extraordinary voice and a better vocabulary because of this book. Ms. Mapayan is a Baha'i womanist leader, professor, and author. She introduced me to the idea of, quote, luxocracy, the potential of human spirit to constitute a highly form of social organization that does not require external mechanisms of control, end quote. This confirmed my desires and hopes with and within Imaginarium. She went on to explain that the divine that is infused in the world and all of humanity, that this innate divinity, when recognized in ourselves and others and earth and all aspects of creation, that when we realize this, that we speak and think and act differently, that we begin to expect different things from the world and we begin to live in a different reality altogether, regardless of what is going on around us. Her focus on spirituality over religion offers a particular critique and honoring of all religion, all the while prioritizing the universality of spirituality. She calls this a life system that encompasses religions and particularity. Quote, womanists embrace many paths to the same destination, and the term life system affirms this value. My reading of this book was not only affirming and informative, but also permissive of my journey and explorations, and so many of yours as well. I next encountered classes on the social ethics of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and a brief history on the Black church. In this, I came to better the correlation of the Black church and Black culture. I better understood MLK's perspective of God and the beloved community, which informs our work. I better understood Malcolm X's critique of religion and how ultimately both men were coming at the same problem from two different angles. I also better understood the reality that both perspectives were feared and eventually killed. This class both dampened my idealistic hope and fueled my fire for being a part of creating a more just world. This class also made me quiet my critiques of the larger church and focus them solely on my experience within the white evangelical, post-evangelical, and progressive church. Black church offered a fresh perspective of what community can and needs to be in light of the suffering of this world. The Black church's perspective broadened the definition of sin to not concentrate on menial acts, but on life-threatening ways and words. If a church has to speak out on sin, it better be speaking out on systemic racism. This was where, too often, my experience of the church was lacking. My ideas for creating a new spiritual community and better world would need to include these voices and these ways, as well as looking for opportunities to support and partners with others on every front. My next classes on community activism dug deeper into this collaborative theory of change. When we started Imaginarium, I knew that I wanted to both found and base our community to be centered on values rather than doctrines. We tried to put people at the center of what and why we do. Later, when exposed to the community organizing models, I realized that they too make values and relationships the glue that holds organizations together. This approach ultimately values hearing and learning the stories of individuals, families, groups of people, and thus building new and lasting relationships. So the very idea of non-hierarchical leadership is rampant in community organizing spaces because it's always dialogical. People can lead, but they also share platforms. They realize that to partner does not diminish what one offers, but can elevate and expand ideas at a more impactful level. The goal becomes not indoctrinating new people, but co-creating conditions where people can become emotionally mature, where it's safe to be human, and where we're all encouraged and allowed to thrive. In the sharing of information, struggles, as well as solutions, you must be ready to pivot, to change, and to evolve as needs and better solutions arise from the collective. This was something that wasn't modeled on any scale that I'm aware of in churches. But in these community organizing spaces, a common metaphor is to be willing to be improvisational. Jazz music, as we know, is birthed and carried by the Black community. It's all about improvisation. It's about having a structure, but being able to play within that structure. It is, in essence, co-leading with the instrument, the given boundaries of the music, and then adding your own taste and flair to it. It takes both your full participation as well as your maximum creativity, and at the same time, the willingness to listen to the others you're making music with and responding accordingly. Jazz improvisation models for us what a healthy collaborative community can live and achieve together. Curiosity is both lauded and encouraged in these spaces. Thus, being willing to change and evolve is not only a wise spiritual ethos for building a vibrant, growing community, but it's also encouraged for our spiritual intentions too. For the individual and the collective to be continually willing to respond, to reassess what are the current convictions and our practices and our structures are, and how those are affecting others. That's called accountability, and that's what we want. For us to live in a state of holding things open-handedly would not dishonor or disvalue anything. Still, instead, if you have something with an open hand, others can see clearly what it is you're offering, as well as help you to surrender things more quickly when they no longer apply. There would be no need for a stronghold, for if something is held up and fitting for everyone to thrive, it would be celebrated and not need to be protected. Our strength comes in the power of the people collectively, living alongside each other, honoring our diversity, and working towards communal systems that benefit not the few, but all. All of this learning has led me to the choice of these two final books and my last guided research. I chose these two books because they seem to encapsulate and push a little further the idea of a post-theistic community and the impact of race, specifically in America, due to our inherited and lived toxic theologies. The first book, Anatheism, holds within it, and by holds I mean open-handedly, the hope, the curiosity, and the willingness to desire to come back to an idea of God after ridding ourselves of a different concept of God. It's not asking someone to be against God or even the idea of God. It's offering that we continuously have a willingness to engage and welcome in strangers, whether they are human or divine. To be an anatheist is to abandon our certainties and to resist absolute positions both against and for the divine. It is a movement, not a state. It acknowledges that the absolute can never be understood absolutely by any single person or religion. Richard, the author, goes on to offer that the temptation is often to take our experiences with the divine or the stranger and to, quote, fold the tent and now build a fortress, to reduce divinity to territory and thereby exclude the stranger, end quote. This is what I've experienced as the unwillingness to grow, to evolve, and to continue to be both explorers of our humanity and of divinity. Richard goes on to describe that within Christian, Jewish, and Muslim communities, that when confronted with tragedy, people chose to let go of the idea of a sovereign and interceding God, but then now they're coming back to another idea of God, a powerless one. They remain open to an experience of the divine that, although it is powerless, gives humanity the power to act, to resist, to live in the face of tragedy. This becomes more powerful than what was previously held dear to us. Richard offers this as well, quote, "No theological statement should be made that could not be credible in the presence of burning children." No theological statement should be made that couldn't be credible in the presence of burning children. Back to my own learning of the teachings of MLK and James Cone and the Black Church's critique of white theology that could not hold the weight of the death and the abuse of the Black community. If any want to choose God, it should be a choice that allows for life to thrive and not suffer. So anatheism then offers an option rather than a necessity. It's the possibility of belief after atheism. This excerpt is especially encouraging to me because of my own personal journey, away from ideas of God and all the while remaining open to mystery. Understanding the spirit and the transcendent are always infused and right alongside the eminent and the secular, that the two stay in dialogue on a journey, always open to fresh interpretations and experiences. One last lesson from anatheism is living intending to be hospitable, that is friendly and welcoming to all strangers or guests. This life approach offers an inclusive view of not only humanity and the diversity of the human experience, but also to the variety of experience and rituals pertaining to the divine. And with that, I move on to the last book of my seminary journey. J. Cameron Carter offers a weighty critique and invitation for not only the Christian church, but for humanity as a whole. He provides that the modern problems we have with race directly tie to our toxic theologies, especially the theological problem of whiteness. This is, again, a recurring theme that we have seen and that we've discussed here. The reality is, he says, that churches have and continue to reproduce the exact conditions that negatively affect millions of humans across the world. Not only have churches participated in human suffering, they've also permitted it in indirect and direct ways. The church has been built on a logic of separation. Race, I've come to finally understand, is a social construct. The reasoning behind race is a logic of violence. Humanity has used the idea of race so that we can imagine who we are linked to or not linked to imagine who is in and who is out. And our churches, unfortunately, have replicated this. Dr. Carter's call continues with the reimagination of how Christianity could live in the world and should live, his words, in the world. His call is for churches and others. I felt wholly included in this book, although self and others in this space being outside of the church. But his call is for us to contest the boundaries of belonging that have been put into place. And this harkens back to what I learned of the early Black church and why it began to exist in the first place. That it began to exist to offer a space of healing as well as be a prophetic voice and modeling a space that allowed for those individuals to thrive. This was also the call of Richard Carney's book, Anatheism, as well. An invitation, no matter what community we're choosing to be a part of, a better and a different world. This is what I've learned, that there is a possibility that the social order and the ways things are can be different, but we must use our imagination. We must begin to listen to one another, to the strangers and to the guest. We must begin to honor the inherent worth of all people and our responsibility to each other because we are connected. I realize that there's no way to talk about God or the divine outside of the human experience. And that realization is not to diminish our ideas, but to uplift our experiences. With that in mind, can we continually be willing to negotiate our beliefs and our stances when they come face to face with life experiences as well as others' life experiences? By allowing this to be an unending process, we choose to go on an endless journey with no specific destination set, but filled with hope for a better world. That can be daunting. But by doing so, I think we can experience more of what humanity, this world, and the divine might have to offer us. So with knowledge and with each other, we're continually experiencing, remembering, and having the opportunity to be reshaped and create a better version of ourselves, our communities, and our world. All of this is a synopsis of what I've learned during the last 3 years and what I hope to continue to apply to my own life and my work and to our work here at Imaginarium. It is an invitation for me that I now extend to you, for us to be better. And I'm so grateful for those of you who have chosen to not only honor my journey, but those of you who have chosen to take your own. For that, I'm encouraged and inspired. That's it. Oh, thanks for those claps. It's always awkward because I am reading and I can't see your faces and I want to see how it's hitting you. So, yeah, so I'm so interested how maybe a reminder of that story for some of you or for others that are hearing it for the first time, what that brings up in you. Yeah, anything. I'm interested in any of it. Or if you don't have commentary, that's good too. We can end soon. But if it did bring up something in you, would love to hear it, and others would too.
I mean, I'm not going to do it, but I could talk for hours, and we have talked for hours, it seems, about just the unraveling at Grace Point. And, when you and Anna met with me that one day at Barnes and Noble, I was just like, is there any way that is there any way we could undo this? Is there any way we could make this not fall apart? And you guys were already moving on. I definitely have some emotion about it. But I think the idea of the anatheism, I mean, I was there at your theology night at your house. Man, that feels really, that I resonate very deeply with it. It's not against anything, but it's celebrating uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's celebrating mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And the further I get away from the certainty of, my 20s and 30s and 40s, it's like, how on earth could I have thought that I had God in a box, that I had him wrapped up? There was this Isaac Airfreight. You guys are all too young for this, but Isaac Airfreight was this really big Christian comedy duo in the late 70s and early 80s. And they were on Maranatha Music. They were very popular. And out of that came this Mitch and Alan or something like that. So Mitch Teamley was one of the guys in Isaac Airfreight. And they would do this bit where people in the church treat God like he's a fugitive hiding out in a building, and you're the cops, and you're on the bullhorn, and you're saying, "We've got you surrounded with scripture. Come out with your blessings up." And it's like, that to me still feels really, really right, is how people view God in a box. They've got him surrounded with scripture. There's no way he can break out of it. He or she can break out of it. And so the idea of mystery just is so beautiful to me. And it's been a really important thing for me. I just need to go suck it up, get the book, and dig in like you have. But thank you. Thank you for all this. The journey is beautiful. Glad to be with you on it.
Same. Yeah, I love that. I was having a conversation actually with Haven, who's the 10-year-old who was on earlier, Christine, but she was, I don't know how it came up. Oh, she saw something on TikTok and she asked what an atheist was. I was like, oh, this is going to be a longer, harder conversation than you want it to be probably, but it's a really lovely conversation. And so I explained to her, like, there's people that believe in God, and most people that believe in God fits a certain form. And that's not true across the board, but for most people, it's a white, powerful, male, sending people to hell, all these things. I said, so then atheism was a rejection of that. Like, no, I would never believe in that. And those are two caricatures, if you will. Obviously, we know there's more within it. But I said, for post-theism, as best I'm understanding it, it's saying, yes, actually, we do reject that God 100%, but we also believe more in the beauty and the transcendence that's available in this world, to say we're asking new questions. So it's not even about having to wrap our minds around who God is specifically. That becomes less of a priority in the broader conversation of celebrating, honoring, like the thriving of the beautiful world in which we live in. Like, that's still a piece of it, but it's just different questions and different things. So she was like, well, I think that's what I am. I'm a post-theist. I was like, I would love it if you would tell people you're a post-theist. Like that. But yeah, it is. And a lot of people, I think humanists even some would consider themselves post-theists because they're then intrigued in a broader history conversation that they haven't been intrigued in before, because when people are saying, if you're talking about God, you're talking about this, X. And this whole post-theism is say, like, no, we're sort of, I hate to say up because I don't mean a hierarchy, but you're moving into a different space to ask not the same questions and finding the same new answers to the same questions. It's literally asking new questions and focusing on new things. So I love it.
Yeah.
Laban's a post-theist.
Has anyone here seen the documentary with Tony Campolo and his son Bart? I have not, but I've heard about it. And Bart is a chaplain of humanism at a major university. His son, he's walked away from being a popular evangelical speaker and teacher, writer. I need to look that up. I need to see if it's on one of the streaming services, but that would be a really interesting documentary.
Yeah.
I love this concept of post-theism, Melissa. I've never heard of it before, but just in thinking about, our journey to finding Imaginarium, I think Brian and I both had very different experiences with Christianity, but had reached a point where it was not a traditional church setting didn't feel like the right fit for either of us, for different reasons. And I think, at least for myself, I kind of was like, well, does that, where does that leave me? How do I identify? And I think the term agnostic, it never felt right. And I don't know why. I think it felt like an other than, as opposed to what I love about this post-theism concept is it still feels like an invitation to the conversation and an invitation to the table, and to have the opportunity to explore the beauty and the connection and the hardships and the spirituality that connects all of us. So yeah, I just wanted you to know, I think it's a really beautiful concept, and I'm really thankful that you shared it with us.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would just echo what Evan just sort of said. I mean, he kind of nailed it, but it's kind of like this, like you said, not agnostic never really fit, but post-theist, it sort of allows for the inclusion of all of this knowledge and experience and all the stuff that I've had in previous churches and all this kind of stuff before, and allows me to sort of reimagine elements of that differently. And so I really like that, because I still feel this strong connection to the divine, whatever that is, but not necessarily to the white patriarchal Christian evangelical God. And I would just also note to comment on something Chris had alluded to as well, just sort of the journey has been kind of a strange thing, and certainly when I first heard of what was happening to break out to create Imaginarium, I had a very similar reaction too, of like, oh my God, how is this going to work? And it's been a little bit of a rocky journey of sorts, but I feel really positive about kind of where we've landed, and especially in the last 6 months or so. I think it's has become a really beautiful thing in its own way, and I love the space to kind of explore. Even every winter song where we include the oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
Jewish.
The Jewish for sure, but the
Kwanzaa story.
Kwanzaa. Thank you. Yes, Kwanzaa stories. I just feel like that's such a broader expansion of a bigger world than I had ever grown up with experiencing. So I love the concept. I love what we're doing, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
I think, and you're noting that, and we've talked about it a few times, and maybe it would be good to do sort of a deep dive and some spiral dynamics sometime together. But Ken Wilber talking about the whole transcend and include. It does not, that includes our dismantling of some things and our letting go and deconstruction, but it also focuses, again, not just on the critiquing of such things, there is a place for that, but on the reimagining, the building upon, the taking the good from, and continually moving on, or expanding more. So those things are all still in us 100%. And you let go of the bad, and that's process. Ooh, that's process thought too. We could go back and revisit that, but I love that you brought that up. Leah, I'm not calling you out, but I do feel like you have something to add, but you don't have to. I just see something in your eyes that's making me lean in, but you don't have to. You're not present.
Oh, no, that's fine. You said me.
Hmm.
You said Leah, right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, I've just been like journaling and stuff. I don't know. I feel like I've had mixed feelings throughout. At the beginning, partially because like I went to Grace Point for a time and then realized that it wasn't the best fit for me, and then found Imaginarium and started coming. And so I didn't really have any negative associations with Grace Point, just like, okay, that's cool for some people, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for. And so it was like hard to hear about that conflict from your perspective, and almost like feel like it's painted in a bad light. And so I guess that's kind of like my own internal, I think I need to process of like, I don't know, just the dissonance of like something can be good for some people and also hurtful to other people. And I don't know, I guess kind of what you're saying, even that like different things serve different people, and like it doesn't mean like if something like doesn't serve us or isn't helpful or is hurtful to us, it doesn't mean we have to 100% reject every single part of it. But like use it to grow and learn and expand. I don't know, I'm kind of like processing this as I'm saying it.
Love it.
I don't know, what I really liked a lot from kind of towards the middle and end of what you were saying is just the idea of constantly questioning, and I like the embrace and welcome in the strangers, be they human or divine. And it really just reminded me of why I really like what I've found in Imaginarium, because I stopped going to church because all of the honestly, I felt like it wasn't addressing some like the racism and patriarchy and a lot of the injustices that I see in the world. And so I stopped going to church because of that reason. But some of the other communities I've been a part of, be they religious or liberal religious or non-religious, don't have the same posture towards just like motion and the constantly questioning. And it just reminded me of how much like I like learning, I like asking questions, I like being challenged and pushed. And like I feel like when I started coming to Imaginarium, it like woke up the part of me that liked Bible study discussions when I was in church. Just like taking a text and being like, but what if you think about it this way, and just like constantly expanding my view. And I know we don't do that often in Imaginarium with respect to the Bible or other religious texts, but I don't know, almost like a challenge to me that I think not to go back to the darn it, now I'm blanking on a word, legalism of like, I need to read my Bible every day, I need to have a study every morning, because I think a lot of times I would get caught up in the legalism of that. But I think the biggest thing I came out of hearing what you had to say, the biggest thing that came out of it for me is like to challenge myself to keep on asking questions and to find a way to integrate that into my life, like not just on Sundays when I meet with people in Imaginarium, but like be it through reading books or listening to podcasts or whatever. But yeah, I personally want to find a way to be challenge my own self more.
I love it. I'm so glad I asked you. Thank you for offering your perspective on all that. It's good for me to clarify for you and the few others that don't know me as well. I 100% think it's Grace Point now is an entirely different place than it was 3 years ago. And I know that because I have friends that are a part of it, and some that are even on the board. And I think they are doing what I know and what I understand to be really lovely, life-giving work within the church. And so I'm really grateful that those things exist. So the Grace Point, my end journey at Grace Point was a very toxic, volatile journey. And it is hard for me to reconcile, because I will tell you, people at that time were like, no, this place is still beautiful and life-giving, but I was experiencing in others very toxic things. So it's hard for me to hold those two things next to each other. But I do want to clarify now, I support people that want to be a part of Grace Point and or any religious space that's offering them life-giving things, because I think it can happen and is happening. So I hope that at least adds a further clarification to what you were bringing up. But I appreciate your perspective so much. Anybody else?
I will. I wrote down notes because I'm a giant nerd. So towards the end of the things you were speaking of, I think what I love about where I am now, which feels very similar probably to where you are, is that the spiritual beliefs I have, or my sense of connection to things, which I've largely experienced more of this since being home all the time, is that it makes those kind of ideas make space for mimicking the patterns that are in the natural world. And, things like seasons, and that there's space for everything, and things aren't competing, but they're just existing simultaneously, and everything's moving forward together. And I think one of the things that ultimately didn't work about church for me was like an unspoken sense of like tribal mentality that you couldn't get outside of the thing you were in. And if you did, there was something wrong, or you were, put into a different box or whatever. And that, in my experience, individualism is what actually connects me to a collective, because being specifically individual and whole within that, then like when everybody gets to be whole as an individual, then that breeds harmony for all things. And I don't know, just nature is the way that's speaking to me right now. Just understanding that things grow and things die, and there's a place for all of that, and literally everything keeps moving forward.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's also speaking to that idea of being whole. I was talking to somebody the other day, this whole idea that so many of us have to focus first on our own worth and get that fact. And so I think that's a little bit of what you're pointing to, like understand like you are a whole, worthy, beautiful person, period. And once you get that, then you further understand your connection and responsibility. But most people can't get to the connection and responsibility until they actually can see themselves as whole and good and worthy. And that's so many people's journey, that they've never been told that. They've never been told that they should think that or allow that. So of course the rest of the world seems to be breaking down on so many states, so many levels. So I love that you brought that up. In nature. Anybody else?
I'll share a little bit I resonate a lot with what everyone's been saying, but just realizing that it's interesting. I think about like when I think about my journey with church, I didn't go to Grace Point, but when I kind of decided like in grad school and I started learning from so many more people of color, like you had mentioned, and learning about different theologies and reading people like James Cone and all these different amazing teachers, and really being pushed to see outside of my white, like middle class, conservative, evangelical boxes that has been my worldview, is like it shifted, everything for me, obviously, but just in how I viewed God. And so as those like how I viewed my spirituality, how I viewed God changed because of my exposure to all these different worldviews and lenses. And through experiencing that, just realized how like they didn't seem to fit in the church as I knew it, because there was no room for questioning or doubt or saying like, that sounds, you know, racist, or that's really, you know, that doesn't make sense, or and just like, I'm just supposed to believe you because you are the pastor, all those different things. And so slowly kind of started moving away from like the institutional church. And then when I like really called it quits was after the Charleston shootings, and went to a service that didn't even talk about them, and like couldn't even like comprehend how these people and this whole institution and entity can exist in this world without talking about like what's going on outside beyond the walls. And so that's just became something that was so important to me, and like didn't feel like I fit anywhere, because I was like almost too Christian for like atheists, but then not Christian enough for Christians. And so it was just like this whole, you know, this whole space of existing. And then I came to Imaginarium, and I think I cried the entire Beloved Begun from Stardust that when we had that gathering the first time I came, because like most of you just said, it was like, well, these people are like affirming who I am and like acknowledging that this is important just as much as or more like than what you believe, or these beliefs you ascribe to. And so just in that journey have found so much the openness, and like you talked about, that open-handedness of a space like Imaginarium, where it's not like you have to say like, this is what I believe, and it's, you know, not a country club that only admits people because they believe a certain thing or look a certain way, but very much connects our humanity and connectedness to each other. And it doesn't, like, it just never made sense to me that in churches that wasn't a thing. Like, how can we not talk about the state of the world and these name white supremacy and racism and all these things happening if we say we kind of believe all the other things? And so just really found those kind of truths and values, and I mean our values of what we believe at Imaginarium. So I mean, I think they articulate so well what everyone who I've ever encountered believes at Imaginarium, and what I think ultimately makes us more open and connected and kind of better humans, I guess, in that sense. So I appreciate you sharing all that, because it deeply resonated.
I'm so glad. I'm also really thankful for the internet and that we can do things online. So even though you're literally across the country, you're still with us 100%.
Yes. This has literally been like saving my life it's been very much like a grounding. I feel very like not grounded and just like in suspension of life. And so this has been like a very grounding practice for me to be able to attend. So I am very thankful. I'm not thankful for COVID, but I'm thankful it's made Imaginarium go online.
You want to? Cece's like, nope. Anybody else? Oh, that baby's making me so happy. Oh, I love it. Okay. We have a special little, what we are considering a treat. I'm going to wait until Ryan comes back though, before we do that, because it involves Ryan. The community email will go out in the morning, and it will list the next like Sundays through the end of June. And the big exciting announcement is that Andre Henry, who I've spoken about before, who's the writer, activist, singer, songwriter, like artist, he's amazing. He's going to be with us on the last Sunday in June. So we're leading up to that. But next week will be a prompt week. The next week will be a game night again, which our first game night was so fun, y'all. So we're doing it again. And then there's the Father's Day weekend. We'll do a normal one like this. And then the following will be with Andre. And then we'll have our happy hours and all that. So I'll reiterate that in the email. But so Ryan has got our creative juices flowing. It took me a long time to get this one done, but we'll do the world premiere to all 9 of us of our song that we're going to put out tomorrow. And this is with Lauren, Ryan, and I. Yeah, so we're so excited about it.
It's been a long, dark night, and I've been waiting for the morning. It's been a long, gonna be alright. It's been all wrong. 'Cause I can see the light of a clear blue morning. I can see the light of a brand new day. I can see the light of a clear blue morning. Everything's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay. It's been a long, long time since I've known the taste of freedom and those clinging vines had me bound. Well, I don't need them. I've been like a captured eagle. You know, an eagle's born to fly. Now that I've won my freedom, like an eagle, I am eager for the sky. 'Cause I can see the light of a clear blue morning. I can see the light of a brand new day. I can see the light of a clear blue morning. Everything's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay. 'Cause I can see the light. I can see the light. Everything's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay.
Yay. No, Dolly Parton. My mom said, did you write that? Nope. Love it. Okay, unmute yourselves. Grab a glass if you have. Do you have your drinks? Do you need a moment to get a drink? Hey, Ashley.
Hi.
They're listening. Let Ryan and Evan get their drink. Christine, we're so glad you both joined us. I hope you'll come back. Lovely. Okay, repeat. Take your drink. Repeat after me. I'm grateful for everything I have.
I'm grateful for everything I have.
I'm grateful for everything I know.
I'm grateful for everything I know.
I'm grateful for everything I am.
I'm grateful for everything I am.
Here's to you, friends.
Cheers.
Lovely. Enjoy your Monday. Enjoy the rest of this day, and we will look forward to seeing you hopefully next week or at Happy Hour Wednesday.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everybody.
Good to see
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.